The Hemshech of Yud Beis and Yud Gimel Tammuz Tafshin Chavtes is a Hemshech that is comprised of two Maimarim. The first being the Maimer Zeis Chukas, which was said on Shabbos Parshas Chukas Balak of Yud Beis Tammuz, and the second Maimer is the Maimer Tefillah Moshe, which was said on Yud Gimel Tammuz the next day by the Farbrengen of Yud Gimel Tammuz. It is interesting to note that when the Rebbe was Magia, when the Rebbe looked over and edited the Maimarim years later in Tafshin and Aleph, so the Rebbe was first Magia, the second Maimer. The Maimer Dibar Maskal Tefillah Moshe is the first Maimer that the Rebbe was Magia, and the Rebbe gave it out it was printed for Yud Aleph Nissen Tafshin Nun Aleph, and only months later for Yud Beis Tammuz was the Rebbe Magia, the first Maimer, the Maimer Zeis Chukas, which this definitely goes to show that this Hemshech is a unique Hemshech. Usually, the way a Hemshech works is that one Maimer, the second Maimer, is built and is based off the first Maimer. And usually when learning a Hemshech, you can't really learn it out of order. The first Maimer, it's necessary to learn the first Maimer first, and then the first Maimer leads you into the second Maimer. That's usually the way a Hemshech works. However, here we see that the Rebbe said the Maimer Zeis Chukas first, and the Maimer Tefillah Moshe second. And then when the Rebbe was Magia the Maimarim and gave them to print, so he was Magia the second Maimer first, and the first Maimer second, which goes to show that there's no really particular order in how we learn this Hemshech. You can learn the first Maimer first or the second Maimer first, and it's a unique Hemshech that it's not pshat that one Maimer leads you into the other one, or one Maimer is built or based off the other one, but rather the two Maimarim are Maimarim that discuss similar concepts. They're both based off the same Maimarim, and the two Maimarim complete each other. But there's no particular order in how you have to learn this Hemshech. We are going to learn the Hemshech, starting with the first Maimer, the Maimer that was said first, the Maimer Zeis Chukas. The reason why we are learning these Maimarim right now, well, obviously, there's a clear connection between these Maimarim and the time we find ourselves in, and that is that we are a month before Yud Beis Tammuz, and these Maimarim are Maimarim of Yud Beis and Yud Gimel Tammuz. But another reason why it is most appropriate to be learning these Maimarim right now in this specific time is we find ourselves now just a few weeks before Gimel Tammuz, and both of these Maimarim, both the Maimer of Zeis Chukas and Tefillah Moshe, discuss the role of Rei Yisrael. Both of these Maimarim discuss and add explanation and depth to the job and to the role of a Rei Yisrael, to a Rebbe, to Nasi Adar, and both Maimarim discuss the unique connection that the Rei Yisrael, that the Rebbe has with the Dar and with his Chassidim. So that is obviously another reason, or maybe the main reason, why it is most appropriate to be learning these Maimarim, this Hemshech, in the time we find ourselves in right now. The Maimer Zeis Chukas is not a Maimer that needs much introduction, so we're almost ready to start the Maimer. Just before we begin learning the Maimer inside, I want to lay out the framework, the structure, the binyan of the Maimer. What's the Hemshech Inyanim? How's the Maimer going to look? So you could say that the Maimer has, b'chlolos, 3 sections. The first section is the Dibar Maskal. Every Maimer has a Dibar Maskal. Every Maimer has the opening, the opening part of the Maimer that leads you into the Maimer. That's the Dibar Maskal. This Maimer has a particularly long Dibar Maskal. Some Maimarim have very short. Some Maimarim, the Dibar Maskal is only a few lines, only half a page. This Maimer has an extremely long Dibar Maskal. Sif Aleph, Beis, and Gimel are all pretty much the Dibar Maskal. And Sifim Beis and Gimel are also pretty long Sifim. So that's a pretty long Dibar Maskal, a pretty long introduction leading us into the Gufa Maimer, into the main discussion, into the main sugya of the Maimer. So that's Sifim Aleph, Beis, and Gimel is pretty much the Dibar Maskal and the introduction to getting to what the Rebbe, the main Nekuda of the Maimer. Then Sifim Dalid and on, from Sif Dalid until pretty much Sif Yud Aleph, is the Gufa Maimer. The Rebbe brings a Hemshech of the Rebbe Hashab. The Rebbe Hashab is a short Hemshech that he said in Tov Reish Samach. So the Rebbe introduces this Hemshech in Sifim Dalid and on, and the Rebbe will first of all summarize the Hemshech of the Rebbe Hashab. The Rebbe will add explanation, will add biur to the Maimer of the Rebbe Hashab, and then the Rebbe is going to go on to be meisif, to add and to be mechadish over the Maimer, the Hemshech of the Rebbe Hashab. That's what's going to be going on in Sifim Dalid through Yud Aleph. The main discussion, the main concept that the Rebbe is going to be discussing, the Rebbe is taking from the Rebbe Shabbos Hemshich, is the sugya of Memale, Seif, and Atzmus. We learn Chassidus, there is an Eibishter, and there's a Likus, and there's many Dargas in Likus, what we call sometimes Seder Shtalshalus. And if you want to categorize, if you want to summarize the entire Seder Shtalshalus, if you want to categorize all of the Dargas in Likus that we learn about in Chassidus, so, Ba'if and Klali, you could say that there are three general categories, and that is Memalik Klalman, Seviv Klalman, and Atzmus. There's Atzmus, the very essence of the Eibishter. There is Seviv, the way the Eibishter reveals himself in an infinite manner, and there's Memali, the way the Eibishter reveals himself in a limited manner. The entire Seder Shtalshalus and all the Dargas and Likus that we learn about in Chassidus can be categorized into these three categories. And that's what I was going to be discussing at length in these sifim, the ideas of Memali, Seviv, and Atzmus, and especially I was going to be discussing at length how these three Dargas and Likus correlate and what relevance they have to Avodas Hashem, to the three Avos. We know there are three Avos. There's the Ava of B'chol Levavcha, B'chol Nafshcha, B'chol Meidecha, and that was going to be discussing at length how these three Avos correlate to the three Avos of B'chol Levavcha, B'chol Nafshcha, B'chol Meidecha. That's what's going on in Sifim Dalid 3 at Aleph. Then Sifir Aleph is going to be a turning point in the Maimer, where the Rebbe is going to introduce a new question. The Rebbe is going to ask a new question on what the Rebbe has been explaining until now. And this new question, Sifir Aleph, is what's going to bring us back eventually to the Dibra HaMaskil, to answering the questions that the Rebbe asked in the beginning of the Maimer. So those are the three sections. In the Maimer, you have the first three sifim, which are the Dibra HaMaskil. You have the next sifim from Dalet till Yud Aleph, is the main, what we call the Gufa Maimer, is the main discussion, the main sugyas that the Rebbe is discussing, the main arichos that the Rebbe is discussing here in the Maimer. And then Sifir Aleph is going to be a turn. The Rebbe is going to ask a question on what he said until now. And that question is what is going to be bringing us back eventually to the Dibra HaMaskil and to answering the questions that we asked, that we started off with in the beginning of the Maimer. Now that we've discussed the structure, the binyan of the Maimer, we are ready to begin learning the Maimer inside. Vidaber Hashem al Moshe Gomer Zeis Chukas Atera Gomer V'yikchu Lecha Paraduma. Pirish Rashi V'yikchu Lecha L'Olam Yinikras Al Shmecha Parish Al Moshe B'Midbar. The Rebbe brings you the pasuk in Parshas Chukas, that Hashem is telling Moshe about the mitzvah of Paraduma, the concept of Paraduma. So the lashon that says in the Torah is v'yikchu lecha. They will bring the paraduma to you, to Moshe. So Rashi says, what is this telling us? What does this mean? V'yikchu lecha, that le'olam yinikras al shmecha. The paraduma will forever be called on your name. Or in other words, the paraduma will forever be associated with Moshe Rabbeinu. There's a special and unique association between the mitzvah of paraduma and Moshe Rabbeinu, and that's what it means v'yikchu lecha, that they will bring the paraduma to you. Says the Rebbe asks, "Tzarich lahavin, ha'Iraq paris shein asa Moshe, v'lo menikras kol ha'paris, shmeina paris asu achakach, v'gam paras sidis sheyasa melech HaMashiach al shmei shel Moshe." The Rebbe asks a very simple question. We know the Rambam tells us there will be 10 paradumas. There's the paraduma that Moshe made in the Midbar. Throughout history, there were another 9 paradumas that were made. And then there is the paraduma, the 10th paraduma, which Mashiach will make when Mashiach will come. And those are the 10 paradumas that there will be throughout history. So says the Rebbe, L'chura, Moshe Rabbeinu was only connected with the first paraduma. Moshe Rabbeinu only had a direct connection with the first paraduma that was made in the Midbar. Why is it that all 10 paradumas, meaning why is that the other 9 paradumas are also going to have a special connection with Moshe Rabbeinu? The lashon of Rashi is L'olam yinikras al shmecha. Paraduma, the mitzvah paraduma, will forever be called in your name. Meaning to say that even the paras that Moshe Rabbeinu will not be involved in their making are also connected, are also associated with Moshe Rabbeinu. So that's the question that I was asking. Why is it that all of the paradumas are connected with Moshe Rabbeinu if Moshe was not involved in making those paradumas in the future? That's the first question that the Rebbe asks. Says the Rebbe weiter, Yosef, Dalpi hayidua, sheshmei shel kol davar sheyikulei, meid al yanu v'teichne, move on, d'zeh shekol ha'paras nikrais al shmei shel Moshe, hu lefi shezeh, ha'shayches l'Moshe, hu yanu v'teichne. Says the Rebbe, let's take it a step further. We know it's mavur in Chassidus that a name in Lashon HaKodesh, anything that has a name in Lashon HaKodesh is not random. In other languages, the fact that a table is called a table is random. It's a shame escape. It's people decided to take the name table and refer to a piece of wood that has 4 legs as a table. The name table, the word table, has nothing to do, doesn't teach us about the concept of a table, of what a table is in its essence. However, in Lashon HaKodesh, anything that has a name, in Lashon HaKodesh, so the letters and then the words, the Hebrew word, let's say take for example the word para. Para is a cow. So the letters, Pei Reish Hey, those letters actually tell us about the teichen and the concept, what a cow is. That's just Mavur Chassidus. So says the Rebbe, before we read right there, so the Rebbe is saying, if we're saying that the name of an object shows on the teichen and what the concept, what that object's all about, so then if we're saying that paraduma is nekras al shmei shel Moshe, if we're saying that the paraduma is called by Moshe Rabbeinu's name, that means that the inyan, the teichen, the concept and the theme of paraduma is connected with Moshe Rabbeinu. Because again, if the name of paraduma is Moshe, if La'il Minikras al Shmech of paraduma is called, if the name of paraduma is Moshe Rabbeinu, so that means that Moshe is the teichen and the inyan of what paraduma is all about. So says the Rebbe, Vapiz the Tzarchlav and Oid Yeser Zeshapars Nikars al Shem Moshe. Hare Asi Asapara Hoysa de Akayanim Vegam Paradishena Nasa de Lazar Koyin. Upirish Parash Asa Moshe Luchir Action Nasa Pierra Seif Vitzivuye Umay Shaychus and the Moshe Van Shenikars al Shemay. Says the Rebbe, this only makes the question we asked before even stronger. We just introduced that a name in Lashon HaKodesh shows on the inyan, the teichen of whichever object has that name. So if the paraduma is called by Moshe Rabbeinu's name, that means the teichen of paraduma is Moshe Rabbeinu. In other words, till now we were learning that the reason why the paraduma is called Al Shmei Shel Moshe is because Moshe Rabbeinu made the paraduma. That's what we're learning until now. In the beginning of the Seif, the reason why the paraduma is called Al Shmei Shel Moshe is because it's Parasha Asa Moshe, because Moshe made it. Now that I was saying, let's take it a step further. Not only are the paradumas called Al Shmei Shel Moshe because Moshe made the paradumas, but there's a much deeper connection between the paraduma and Moshe Rabbeinu, and that is that Moshe, the teichen, the inyan of paraduma is Moshe Rabbeinu. Says the Rebbe, seemingly, the truth is that on the contrary, not only do we have to understand what teichen, what connection is there between the paraduma and Moshe Rabbeinu, we don't even find that Moshe Rabbeinu made the paraduma. The paraduma was made through the kohanim. And when we say the first paraduma was made by Moshe, Parasha Asa Moshe, only means that Moshe gave the tzivah and the hirah, Moshe gave the command from the Eibusher to make the paraduma. So the paraduma wasn't even made by Moshe. So seemingly we have two extremes going on here. On the one hand, we're saying that the paraduma was nikras al Shmei Shel Moshe, which not only does that mean that Moshe made the paraduma, it means that the whole inyan, the teichen of the paraduma, is Moshe Rabbeinu. So that's one on the one hand. One extreme. One extreme is that we see that the paraduma is so strongly connected to Moshe Rabbeinu that it's nikras al Shmei, which tells us the inyan, the teichen of paraduma is Moshe Rabbeinu. But on the other hand, says the Rebbe, we don't even find that Moshe Rabbeinu even made the paraduma. So how could it be that Moshe, seemingly b'shitrius, when a person looks externally on the surface level, Moshe Rabbeinu barely even has a connection to the paraduma? Moshe Rabbeinu didn't even make the paraduma. The paraduma was only, when we say Moshe made the paraduma, it means that Moshe gave the tzivah, he gave the command to make the paraduma. So how can we go ahead and say that the paraduma is the kras al Shmei Shel Moshe? Seemingly, again, on a surface level, we don't see any connection between the paraduma and Moshe Rabbeinu. So that's the question I was asking. We have to understand what is the deep connection. It's clear from Rashi, there's a very deep connection between the paraduma and Moshe Rabbeinu. But we have to understand what that connection is, because seemingly, Moshe didn't even make the paraduma. And that's what I was going to go on to discuss in the next Sifim, Sif Beis and Gimel, what is the connection, what is this deep connection between the paraduma and Moshe Rabbeinu. Says the Rebbe in Sif Beis, Va'ininu, the East of the Torah, the Tam of Zesher paraduma. Nemar Zeish Chukas Torah, who lefi shemitzvos paraduma, who klolos Torah. Says the Rebbe brings here from the Torah. The Alter Rebbe asks a very simple question. It says in the pasuk, Vidaber Shel Moshe, Zeish Chukas Torah. Now, the Eibusher is about to tell Moshe the mitzvah paraduma. So why does he say Zeis Chukas HaTorah? Chukah simply means laws. And Moshe says, this is the law of the Torah. Seemingly Hashem should have said, Zeis Chukas Paraduma. Not Zeis Chukas HaTorah. Hashem is not about to tell Moshe the entire Torah. He's about to tell him one particular mitzvah, the mitzvah Paraduma. So why does it say Zeis Chukas HaTorah? So the Alter Rebbe explains, because Paraduma is actually a very clolistic mitzvah. Paraduma is a mitzvah that represents the entire Torah. We'll see soon later in this paragraph, the Rebbe will bring from the Alter Rebbe why it is that Paraduma represents the entire Torah. Right now, let's just accept that as a fact, that Paraduma represents the entire Torah. And that's why it says, Zeis Chukas HaTorah. So it says that based off this word in Likutei Torah, that paraduma represents the entire Torah. Lachein k'mei shat-Torah nikras al shmei shel Moshe. K'mei shekasuv zichru Torahs Moshe avdi kein gam paraduma shiklos ha-Torah nikras al shmei shel Moshe. It says that based on this word in Likutei Torah, we can answer the question that we just asked in Sif Aleph. Likutei Torah tells us that paraduma refers to the entire Torah. So we know there's a pasuk in Malachi that says Zichru Torahs Moshe Avdi. The entire Torah is attributed and associated to Moshe Rabbeinu. It's called the Torah of Moshe Rabbeinu. So it's very understood. At least we have a simple answer why the paraduma is nikras al shmei shel Moshe. Because again, paraduma we're not only referring to the specific mitzvah of paraduma, but paraduma is a code name to the entire Torah. Paraduma refers to the entire Torah. So if paraduma refers to the entire Torah, so it's very understood why the paraduma is nikras al shmei shel Moshe, because the entire Torah is also called al shmei shel Moshe. The entire Torah is nikras al shmei shel Moshe. So that's why paraduma is nikras al shmei shel Moshe. Says the Rebbe, let's take it a step further. The mashkos of the Likutei Torah. Shemitzvos paraduma klalos ha-Torah. Hakavani beikar lemitzvos ha-Torah. Says the Rebbe, we know there's Torah and there's mitzvahs. Torah is the learning, is the limud of the mitzvahs, and then there is the mitzvahs themselves, the fulfillment of the mitzvahs. Says the Rebbe, based off the beer in Likutei Torah, which we're about to see in the brackets, the Rebbe is going to bring the beer of Likutei Torah. The way Likutei Torah explains the connection that Torah has to paraduma, it comes out from Likutei Torah that we're specifically referring to the mitzvahs. When we say paraduma as a connection to Torah, we don't mean Torah als limud Torah, the study of Torah, but rather we're referring to the fulfillment of mitzvahs. Let's see in the brackets. Why is this? It says the Rebbe can move me abir Likutei Sham tzesh mitzvahs paraduma who klaus Torah who ki yiseid kol mitzvahs who ratzav v'shuv who paraduma ini ratzav v'shuv. Likutei Torah explains that the concept of Rotzi v'shuv is found in paraduma. Rotzi, b'dar klal, means the idea of ava, where a person is running away from this world and trying to have a connection to the Eibishter, a person trying to lift himself up and go beyond the gashmias and the churmias of Elam Hazeh. That's b'dar klal, the idea of a Rotzi. And that is found in paraduma. Paraduma, you have to take the para and burn the paraduma. And fire represents the idea of Rotzi, of aliyah molmata l'mayla. That's the idea of fire. Fire goes up. Fire burns. The direction of fire is burning upwards. The fire goes upwards, and therefore the fire of the burning of the paraduma represents the idea of rotzui. Then, when a person wants to be matar someone with using the paraduma, so you have to add water into the mixture. You take the ashes of the paraduma and you add water into the mixture. You make a mixture between the ashes of the paraduma and the water. Pouring water represents the idea of shuv, of settling down, staying here in this world and fulfilling mitzvahs. That's the idea of rot and shuv. We don't have to elaborate on this. This is not the teichen, this is not the main point of the maamer, but this is what it says in Likutei Torah, that paraduma represents the idea of rotzi and shuv. And rotzi and shuv is something that's essential to all the mitzvahs. So that's why the Alter Rebbe explains in Likutei Torah, why is it that paraduma is called Zeis Chukas Torah? What's the unique connection between paraduma and the entire Torah? Being that paraduma represents the idea of Ratzi and Shuv, and the entire Torah is connected to Ratzi and Shuv, so therefore paraduma is connected to the entire Torah. That's what Alter Rebbe explains in Likutei Torah. But now, based on this, it comes out that when we're saying that paraduma is connected to the whole Torah, we're specifically referring to the mitzvahs. Which part of Torah? Where is it negea? Where is it relevant to have the idea of Ratzi v'Shuv when it comes to the fulfillment of mitzvahs? So when we're saying that paraduma represents Torah, we're specifically referring to the fulfillment of mitzvahs. Paraduma has a special connection to all of the mitzvahs. So says the Rebbe, Klolos mitzvah Torah, shaychas l'Moshe. Says the Rebbe, okay, so what's going on here? We're saying that paraduma is connected to Moshe Rabbeinu. The paraduma is nikras al shmei shel Moshe. There's a unique connection between paraduma and Moshe. We also know there's a unique connection between paraduma and the entire Torah. Like it says, Zeis Chukas Torah. Paraduma represents the entire Torah. So says the Rebbe, but based on the Biur Likutei Torah comes out that when we say paraduma is connected to Torah, we don't mean only Torah, but we're actually specifically referring to the mitzvahs. Paraduma is a code name for mitzvahs, for the fulfillment of mitzvahs. So says the Rebbe, if paraduma, when we say the word paraduma, we don't mean the specific mitzvah paraduma. We mean mitzvahs. And we're saying that Moshe, that paraduma, is Nikras al Shmei Shel Moshe. In other words, what we're saying is that the fulfillment of mitzvahs, not only Torah, but specifically the fulfillment of mitzvahs, has a unique connection to Moshe Rabbeinu. And that's what the Rebbe is going to go on to explain here in Seif Beis. In the next two Sifim, the Rebbe is going to go on to give two explanations as to why specifically the fulfillment of mitzvahs has a unique connection to Moshe Rabbeinu. And that's why paraduma, which again, based on Chukot Torah, comes out that paraduma is referring to mitzvahs. Why is it that mitzvahs are called on the cross, are called al Shmei Shel Moshe? The Rebbe is going to give two biurim. Why? What is the unique connection between the fulfillment of mitzvahs and Moshe Rabbeinu? Says the Rebbe Weiter, what's the first biur in the unique connection between the fulfillment of mitzvahs and Moshe Rabbeinu? V'yeshel vayir zel pi ma shekosu b'Tanya datam al zeh shetziva Moshe Rabbeinu l'darsh nichsu la'aretz. Look is Kriyashma Pamayim B'chol Yom. Lekabel Malchus Shmayim B'Siras Nefesh. Af Shivtiach Lehem Pachtchem Merachem Yitin Hashem Megomer. The Alter Rebbe explains in Tanya that Moshe Rabbeinu told the Yidden before they went in the Darsh Nichsul Arts, before they went into Eretz Yisrael, the concept of saying Kriyashma twice a day, in the morning and at night, the idea of saying Shema. And we know the idea of reading, of saying Kriyashma is connected with the idea of B'Mekabel Malchus Shmayim and Eifrim B'Siras Nefesh. Like it says in Kriyashma, B'chol Meidecha, B'chol Nashchol Meidecha, Afil Neitov Nafshecha. So Kriyashma is connected, there's a unique connection between the idea of saying Shema and being Makabel Malchus Shamayim in a way that you're ready to be Meiser Nefesh, to give your life away for the Eibishter. So the Rebbe asks, seemingly, it doesn't make sense. Why did Moshe Rabbeinu have to command, specifically the door that's going into Eretz Yisrael, why did Moshe have to tell them about the idea of Mesiras Nefesh? Simply, when does the Yid need to come on to doing Mesiras Nefesh? When a Yid is living in a time of tsaris, and there are people that are trying to prevent Yidden from fulfilling Torah and mitzvahs, and Yidden are in a time where they're controlled by other people, that's when Yidden need to have Mesiras Nefesh. But the Yidden are about to go into Eretz Yisrael. And Moshe Rabbeinu promised the Yidden that the Eibishter is going to give, all the Goyim are going to have fear from the Yidden. And the Yidden are going to be having control of Eretz Yisrael. So why is it specifically when the Yidden are going into Eretz Yisrael, Moshe reminds them and tells them about the idea of Kriyashma, which is the idea of Mesiras Nefesh? Why would a dar that's going into Eretz Yisrael, that's going to be safe, that's going to have safety, etc., why are they going to have to know about the idea of Mesiras Nefesh? So Alter Rebbe explains in Tanya, who the Alter Rebbe there explains in Tanya at length that the simple and basic fulfillment of Torah mitzvahs is dependent on Mesiras Nefesh. Naturally, we assume that the idea of Mesiras Nefesh is only applicable when someone has a sword by your neck, or someone's threatening to kill you if you don't serve Avodah Zarah. That's when a person has to use Mesiras Nefesh. When does the person give away his life for the Eibishter is only when your life is being threatened and you're being told that if you're not going to do a certain avera, you're going to be, someone's going to do something bad to you. That's naturally how we perceive the idea of Mesiras Nefesh. But Alter Rebbe explains in Tanya that the truth is that all of our Torah mitzvahs is dependent on remembering the idea of Mesiras Nefesh. We're not going to discuss it at length, but just briefly, the Alter Rebbe explains in Tanya that a person always has an enemy together with him, and that's the Yetzer Hara, Nefesh Bahamis. And the Nefesh Bahamis is always trying to convince a Yid not to do Torah mitzvahs or to do the wrong thing. That's the Nefesh Bahamis, the Yetzer Hara, trying to convince a Yid, persuade a Yid to do something that's going against the Ratzon of the Eibishter. And sometimes a Yid doesn't have the ability to fight against Nefesh Bahamis. Sometimes a Yid is persuaded by his Nefesh Bahamis to do something wrong. So the Alter Rebbe gives a person a trick, a tool to fight against Nefesh Bahamis. What gives a Yid the koyach to fight against Nefesh Bahamis? What gives a Yid the koyach not to listen to Nefesh Bahamis and to hold himself back from doing the wrong thing and to give him the koyach to do the right things? The Alter Rebbe says it's by remembering that you have the koyach to be Meiser Nefesh. If a Yid would remember that if he were to be held up by a guy, and the guy would tell him, serve Avodah Zarah, or I'm going to kill you, the Yid would have the koyach, a Yid has the koyach inside of him to give his life away for the Eibishter. So if a Yid remembers that he has the koyach to give his life away from the Eibishter, so for sure, when it comes to the fulfillment of a mitzvah, to doing a mitzvah essay, or to hold himself back, to prevent himself from transgressing, from being over an aleisa say, for sure Yid has the koyach to hold himself back and stop himself from not listening to the Yetzer Hara Nefesh Bahamis. That's what Alter Rebbe explains again briefly. It's a big arichos in Tanya, but this is what Alter Rebbe explains in Tanya. That a Yid's, the fulfillment of mitzvahs, is dependent on me remembering that I have the koyach to be Meiser Nefesh to give my life away for the Eibishter. So says the Rebbe, so based on this idea, Shleimar, the Zeh Shem Moshe Dafke, Tzivul Zeh Shadar Nichs La'aretzu, Kim Mesiras Nefesh Ina Bitul. וכיוון שהאדם הוא מציאס, הפך מן הביטול, לכן, בכדי שהנה המסירות נפש יהיה אצלי בגילוי, ובאופן שיהיה קבוע בליבי תמיד ממש, יומם ולילה, לימש מזכרני, צריך לזה נצנס כך מיוחדת. Says the Rebbe, okay, that's the explanation as to why the Yidden, although they were going to Eretz Yisrael, and the Yidden knew they're going to be safe and secure when they're going into Eretz Yisrael, they're not going to have to fight with Goyim. Im kol zeh, even though the Yidden knew that they're going into Eretz Yisrael, and they're not going to have to be under the rulership of other nations, Im kol zeh, nonetheless, they were commanded with the tzivuy, they were told about the concept of Kriya Shema. Why were they told about Kriya Shema, which speaks about Mesiras Nefesh? Because Mesiras Nefesh is the Yesod, it's the foundation to fulfilling mitzvahs. That's what we just explained. But Rebbe goes on to say Weiter, why is it that specifically Moshe Rabbeinu was the one that commanded Yidden, was the one that told them about Kriya Shema? Couldn't it have been Yeshua? Yeshua was the one that's taking the Yidden into Eretz Yisrael. Why did it specifically have to be Moshe Rabbeinu that he's the one that's going to tell the Yidden about the idea of Mesiras Nefesh? Says the Rebbe, the reason for this is because Mesiras Nefesh is not natural. We are a Metzias. Naturally, a person here in El Maz is a Metzias. Mesiras Nefesh is the idea of bittul. What's the name of Mesiras Nefesh? Mesiras Nefesh means that a Yid is ready to give himself away, give his life away for the Eibishter. That's obviously a very great level of bittul. So Mesiras Nefesh is clearly connected with the idea of bittul. But a human being is a Metzias. So on the one hand, we're saying that in order to fulfill mitzvahs, what gives a Yid the koyach to fulfill mitzvahs? What gives a Yid the koyach to stand up to the challenges of the Nefesh Bahamis is specifically remembering that he has the koyach to go on Mesiras Nefesh. That's on the one hand. On the other hand, the Yid's a Metzias. So it's very hard for a Yid to relate to and to live with the idea of Mesiras Nefesh. So what gives a Yid the koyach to live with Mesiras Nefesh? The Rebbe explains it's specifically you need to have a uniqueness in this koyach to remember, and that gives you the ability to be constantly living with the idea of Mesiras Nefesh. So who gives us that koyach? Says the Rebbe weiter, "Vanessens koyach hu adim Moshe, ki Moshe ina bitul nachnu ma." ולכן, עדי שמשה ציוו דרש נכנס לארץ, לקבל עם פעמיים בכל יום, מלך השמיים במסירת נפש, על ידי זה נתן להם הכוח, לזכור תמיד, הנה מסירת נפש שלהם. Says the Rebbe, who is the perfect one to give the Yidden the koyach to remember and to live constantly with this attitude, with this lifestyle of Mesiras Nefesh? And it's specifically Moshe Rabbeinu, because Moshe Rabbeinu is the epitome of bittul. Like Moshe says, v'nachnu ma. V'nachnu ma means we are. What are we? Moshe Rabbeinu represents the ultimate level of bittul. The whole identity of Moshe is bittul. That's what Moshe Rabbeinu is, a bittul to the Eibishter. Moshe is totally someone that has no identity for himself. His whole identity, his whole metzias is the Eibishter. Moshe is someone that lives with a constant bittul. So if the Yidden need a koyach, if the Yidden need special help to be living with Mesiras Nefesh, which Mesiras Nefesh is the idea of bittul, there's nobody better than Moshe Rabbeinu that can give over to the Yidden this koyach, this ability to be living with a constant state of Mesiras Nefesh. And that's why it is specifically Moshe Rabbeinu that told the Yidden about Shema, about Kriya Shema, before they went into Eretz Yisrael. Says the Rebbe, "V'zeu lo'il minikras al shmecha." Kiyum ha-mitzvahs, Torah mitzvah said, the paradumi close to mitzvahs, tolui b'schir sinam Mesiras Nefesh. V'koyach lisker tam d'inam Mesiras Nefesh, v'adei Moshe. So says the Rebbe, and this is what it means. We said before in Seif Aleph, the Rebbe brought from Rashi, that paraduma is nekras al shmecha. It's nekras al shmei shel Moshe Rabbeinu. The paraduma is called by the name of Moshe Rabbeinu. In other words, there's a special connection, special association between paraduma and Moshe. What is the special connection between Moshe and paraduma? Paraduma represents mitzvahs, like we brought before from the Chukot Torah. When we say paraduma, we don't mean the specific mitzvah paraduma. We mean mitzvahs. So what does it mean that mitzvahs are nekras al shmei shel Moshe? Because who gives a Yid? First of all, what gives a Yid? What gives a Yid the koyach to fulfill the mitzvahs is Mesiras Nefesh. And who gives a Yid the koyach to have Mesiras Nefesh? Who gives Yid the ability to be living with a constant attitude in a lifestyle of Mesiras Nefesh? It is specifically Moshe Rabbeinu. So that's why Lo'olam hi nekras al shmecha. Paraduma, which refers to the mitzvahs, are always have a unique connection and a unique association with Moshe Rabbeinu. Because mitzvahs, the fulfillment of mitzvahs is taught Mesiras Nefesh, and Mesiras Nefesh comes from Moshe Rabbeinu. Says Rebbe right there, not only through Moshe Rabbeinu, but also by the pashtus of the Moshe Sheholder, ad chak me'ech ad morning sidirein b'asam chugula. And says Rebbe, where do you get the koyach to fulfill Torah mitzvah Mesiras Nefesh? It is specifically through Moshe, and al derech zeh, this pashtus of Moshe. We know that it says in the Zohar that every generation has a Moshe Rabbeinu. So who are the ones giving the Yidden in every generation the koyach to fulfill mitzvahs, Mesiras Nefesh? It is Moshe and the Espashtus, the extension of Moshe, which is found in every single generation, until our generation that had the Nasi of the Frierdiker Rebbe in our generation, which the Frierdiker Rebbe is the Baal Simcha V'Geula, because the Rebbe is saying this Maimer again on Yud Beis Yud Gimel Tammuz. So that's why we're referring to the Frierdiker Rebbe as the Baal Simcha V'Geula that had his Simcha and his Geula. He was released on Yud Beis Tammuz. Says the Rebbe adds over here, V'Yashleimar, Ta'ideish, Avedashal Nesidereinu, B'chol, Meshach Shleishim, Shneis Nesiyusei, Hoysem Sir Nefesh Begilui, Lachen, since Koyach HaZchir Sam Mesiras Nefesh, Meis Pashtus Shede Moshe Shabdereinu, who Begilui Ed Yosef. The Rebbe adds over here that we know the Frierdiker Rebbe lived the life of Mesiras Nefesh. The Frierdiker Rebbe, you can say from all the Rebbeim, every Rebbe had his times of Mesiras Nefesh, but the Frierdiker Rebbe explains many places how all the years and all the eras of the Frierdiker Rebbe were connected with a great amount of Mesiras Nefesh. We know when the Frierdiker Rebbe was in Russia, there was an extreme and immense amount of Mesiras Nefesh going on over there in Russia. There was Mesiras Nefesh the Frierdiker Rebbe had to undergo when he was living in Poland, and there was great Mesiras Nefesh that the Frierdiker Rebbe had to undergo when he was living here in America and trying to fight with the culture here in America. So all the years of the Frierdiker Rebbe were connected with great amounts of Mesiras Nefesh. So says the Rebbe, being that the Nasi of the Dur of the Frierdiker, the Dur of the Frierdiker Rebbe, the Nasi, the Frierdiker Rebbe, which was the Nasi of his Dur obviously has a very strong and a very clear koyach to be living with Mesiras Nefesh, because the Frierdiker Rebbe was a Nasi that was living with Mesiras Nefesh Begoli. That's what the Rebbe's adding over here. Again, the point comes out. What's the Rebbe's point? The Rebbe's bringing out of here that we had a question to Aleph. What's the connection between Paraduma and Moshe? Why is the Paraduma Nikras Hashmeish al Moshe? So says the Rebbe based off of the Torah that Paraduma doesn't mean Paraduma. It means the mitzvahs. And what's the first connection? The Rebbe's explaining over here. What's the connection between the mitzvahs and Moshe Rabbeinu? Is because in order to fulfill mitzvahs properly, in order to stand up to the struggles and the challenges of Nefesh Bahamis, a Yid has to be living with a constant Mesiras Nefesh. A Yid has to always remind himself that he has the koyach to be Meiser Nefesh, to give his life for the Eibishter, that a Yid does not want to separate, does not want to be detached at all from the Eibishter. That's called living with Mesiras Nefesh, the way the Alter Rebbe explains in Tanya. And who gives us the koyach to live with Mesiras Nefesh? Moshe Rabbeinu. That's why Nikras al Shmecha. That's why the mitzvahs are referred to, and there's a special association, a connection between the mitzvahs and Moshe Rabbeinu. The Rebbe added over here that this is especially true when it comes to the Frierdiker Rebbe, that the Frierdiker Rebbe was a Nasi that lived begoli with constant Mesiras Nefesh, and therefore his dar obviously has a unique connection and has a special sense koyach to be living with Mesiras Nefesh begoli. That's the first beer, the first explanation as to what is the connection between Moshe Rabbeinu and Paraduma. Now the Rebbe is going to go on and give a second explanation as to what is the connection between Moshe Rabbeinu and the Paraduma. But before the Rebbe explains this second connection, the Rebbe is going to introduce a new way of explaining what is the connection between Paraduma and the mitzvahs. Until now, we were learning, based off Lakut Torah, that what is the connection between Paraduma and the mitzvahs. Just like Paraduma represents the idea of Ratzoi V'Shuv, so too every mitzvah is connected to the idea of Ratzoi V'Shuv. And that's the connection between Paraduma and all the mitzvahs. Why is Paraduma referred to as Zeis Chukas HaTorah? Why is Paraduma referred to as the chayk, as the law of all of the mitzvahs? It's the Chukas HaTorah, because Paraduma is the idea of Ratzoi V'Shuv, and Ratzoi V'Shuv is something that's relevant and applicable to all the mitzvahs. That's what we learned until now. Then we said, being that Paraduma represents all the mitzvahs, because Paraduma is the idea of Ratzoi V'Shuv, Moshe Rabbeinu is the one that gives us the koyach from Mesiras Nefesh, so that's the connection between Paraduma and Moshe Rabbeinu. So in other words, it's a little bit of an indirect connection, meaning to say, Paraduma represents the mitzvahs because of the idea of Ratzoi V'Shuv. Moshe Rabbeinu is connected to the idea of mitzvahs because he gives us the koyach to fulfill the mitzvahs with Mesiras Nefesh. So the connection between Paraduma and Moshe Rabbeinu is a bit indirect. There is a connection, but it's not as direct. Now the Rebbe is going to introduce a new way of understanding the connection between Paraduma and the mitzvahs. And based on this new way of understanding the connection between Paraduma and the mitzvahs, there's going to be a much more direct connection between Moshe Rabbeinu and Paraduma. In Ara 21, the Rebbe brings the advantages, the milas, of learning this second beer over the first beer. We're not going to learn the hara inside, but it's advisable. It's a very geshmak hara. In Ara 21, the Rebbe explains the advantages of this second beer over the first beer. Let's see the second beer inside. Yosef, the me'apiud in possession mitzvahs paraduma. He klalos kol ha'teira. Shalachin nemar ba'zei chukas ha'teira hu. Ki ha'yisei d'chol ha'mitzvahs hu sheheim chuka. Hainu sha'amitzvah same ratzon elyin shalamaylu me'aseichel. V'lachein gam kiyumam tzarich liyis b'derech kabbalas el. Says the Rebbe, here the Rebbe is introducing a new explanation as to what is the connection between paradum and all the other mitzvahs. We know that there are different types of mitzvahs. There's, in general, 3 categories of mitzvahs. Eidos, chukim, mishpatim. We learned about this at length in one of the other Maimarim, in the Maamar of Kir Shalcha Bincha. So here we're just going to discuss this concept briefly, because again, it's not the main sugya that we're learning about over here. There are 3 types of mitzvahs. Eidos, chukim, mishpatim. What is the difference in general? In general, there's 2 categories. There are mitzvahs that make sense. There are mitzvahs that have rational explanations as to why we fulfill these mitzvahs. Those are the mitzvahs of mishpatim, and even eidos. Eidos also are mitzvahs that have some sort of reasoning, some sort of explanation that we can understand logically with our human intellect. And then there are chukim. Chukim are mitzvahs, they are laws that transcend, that go beyond our intellect. That's the 2 categories of mitzvahs. Mishpatim and eidos on the one side, which are mitzvahs that we can grasp, we can have some sort of explanation, and chukim, mitzvahs that go beyond our understanding, our human intellect. So the Rebbe is saying over here that the truth is that although in general there's 2 categories, but the truth is that every single mitzvah is meant to be fulfilled as a chik. When a yid fulfills a mitzvah, even a mitzvah that's a mishpat, even a mitzvah that makes sense, like let's say for example, don't kill, don't steal, or kibbud av aim, all of these mitzvahs are mishpatim. These are mitzvahs that a person, even human intellect, is mechayiv. A regular human being, even not a yid, if he wasn't commanded by the Eibusher and the Torah to fulfill these mitzvahs, it's very possible that he would have fulfilled these mitzvahs anyways. Because these are basic mitzvahs that common sense is mechayiv. Nonetheless, even though the not killing and not stealing or kibbud av aim, honoring your parents, are mitzvahs that are mishpatim, a yid is meant to fulfill these mitzvahs because they're the ratzon of Hashem. You're not only meant to fulfill them because they make sense, but the yesod, the foundation as to why we fulfill these mitzvahs is because this is what Hashem wanted, whether it makes sense or not. Why is this? Why is Yid meant to fulfill even mishpatim just because they're the ratzon Hashem? Because says the Rebbe, the truth is that every mitzvah, no matter which mitzvah it is, no matter if it's a mitzvah, it's a chik, or it's a mishpat, the truth is that it is the ratzon of Hashem which transcends seichel. Meaning to say, seichel, logic, intellect, is something the Eibusher created. The Eibusher created intellect and all the rules of intellect. It's a creation, it's a nivra of the Eibusher. Mitzvahs, the Eibusher's ratzon for mitzvahs, transcends and comes before seichel. The Eibusher's ratzon for all the mitzvahs, all the mitzvahs, every single mitzvah is the ratzon of the Eibusher. Meaning Hashem wanted these mitzvahs to be fulfilled even before intellect was created, before the whole concept of seichel existed. This is the Eibusher's ratzon atzmi. Every mitzvah is the Eibusher's ratzon atzmi. Elamai, what happened? Hashem has a ratzon for all the 613 mitzvahs. Certain mitzvahs the Eibusher chose to give them reasons that they should make sense to us. The Eibusher chose that certain things that he wanted, the Eibusher wanted all of these 613 mitzvahs for no reason, for no logical reason. But the Eibusher decided that he's going to give some of the mitzvahs reasons. He's going to allow that some of the mitzvahs should make sense to us human beings. What does this tell us? This tells us that the truth is that every mitzvah is equally the ratzon of Hashem, which transcends seichel. We're meant to fulfill them. The Eibusher desires these mitzvahs, whether they make sense or not. It's just that the Eibusher gave us a gift, you could say, or made it easier for us, that some of the mitzvahs should be mechuyev, some of the mitzvahs should be dictated, that we should want them, even in seichel anushi, even in human intellect. But what this tells us is that when a yid fulfills the mitzvahs, even a mitzvah of mishpatim, even a mitzvah that makes sense, really a yid's attitude to fulfilling the mitzvah should be that the first and foremost, the reason why the yid's fulfilling the mitzvah is because this is the ratzon of the Eibusher. After that, after a yid knows that this is the ratzon of the Eibusher, then the yid's approach could be that once I'm fulfilling this mitzvah because the ratzon of Hashem, I can also fulfill this mitzvah because it makes sense to me. But the foundation to every mitzvah is that I'm fulfilling this mitzvah because this is the ratzon of the Eibusher, whether it makes sense or not. That's what I've been saying over here. So this is the connection between paraduma and all the other mitzvahs. Why? Paraduma is the ultimate chik. Paraduma is the mitzvah that doesn't make sense. Like even Shlomo HaMelech said that he can't understand the reasoning for the paraduma. And Shlomo HaMelech was the chacham mikol adam. Shlomo HaMelech was the wisest person. And even Shlomo Melech didn't understand the reason for paraduma. So paraduma is that mitzvah that represents the ultimate chayk. So what's the connection between paraduma and all the other mitzvahs? Because the truth is that every other mitzvah is also, in its essence, is like paraduma. Just like paraduma is a chayk, is a mitzvah that makes no sense at all, and we fulfill the mitzvah paraduma. Just because the Ratz and the Eibush there, so to every other mitzvah, in its essence, is the Ratz and the Eibush there, and we're really meant to fulfill every mitzvah, just like paraduma, we're meant to fulfill all the other mitzvahs, just because it's the chayk of the Eibush there, chukah, that's the connection, the new explanation that is bringing here in the Maimer, between the connection between paraduma and all the other mitzvahs. Says the Rebbe, "Vapiz yuvan oid yeser. Ze sheparaduma nekras al shmei shel Moshe. Ki b'chtei shekim kol hamitzvos. Hagam sheyesh leim tam. Yeh ba'if in the zeis chukas atayda. Hu ayitei shatayda mitzvosel. Gam la'achei shenestab shebechachma v'seichel nekras al shmei shel Moshe. Shenyani hu bittul teidas Moshe avdi. Validei ze yesh nan since kayach. L'chol acham Yisrael. Adei b'chinas Moshe shabei shekim hamitzvah shelo yeh bebittul. The Kabbalah's kikim mitzvah paraduma zeis chukas atayda. Says the Rebbe, based off this new explanation as to why paraduma represents, is connected to the entire Torah. Based off this new explanation, we now have a deeper understanding as to what is the connection between Moshe Rabbeinu and paraduma. Because who gives us the koyach to fulfill all the mitzvahs in the Eifin of Chukah Chakakti Gzer Gazarti? Seemingly it should be very hard for a human being to fulfill a mitzvah that makes sense just because the Ratz and the Eibush there. We nowadays, B'Poyol, we exist in a reality, in a world where the Eibush already gave some of the mitzvahs reasoning. There are many mitzvahs that they make sense to us. Again, don't kill, don't steal, kibbutz v'ein, and many, many more. There are many mitzvahs that B'Poyol, practically, these mitzvahs make sense to us. So what gives a yid the koyach to fulfill these mitzvahs just because it's the Ratzon of Hashem? At the end of the day, these mitzvahs make sense to us. They're logical. What gives us the ability to fulfill these mitzvahs because of the Ratzon of Hashem? Shalamayla metam v'das. Says Rebbe, what gives us the koyach? Because paraduma is nikras al shmei shel Moshe. Because the Torah is nikras al shmei shel Moshe. All of the mitzvahs are connected to Moshe Rabbeinu. Like it says, zichru teras Moshe avdi. Torah is unique. Although on the one end, the Yesod of Torah, the foundation of all the mitzvahs, is that they're the Ratzon of Hashem. That's on the one hand. On the other hand, the Eibishter went ahead and took some of these mitzvahs and gave them reasoning. The Eibishter created a system of logic. And some of the mitzvahs, he made them part of the system of logic. Some of the mitzvahs, Hashem made that these mitzvahs should make sense in human intellect. That's on the other hand. What's unique about Torah, Torah's Moshe Avdi, that even when the Eibishter took the mitzvahs and he gave them reasoning, a yid is still able to be in tune with the Ratzon of the Eibishter, the way it exists beyond the reasoning that the Eibishter gave it, which is a big chiddush. Again, we're not going to elaborate too much on this, but that's what they're saying over here. That the Eibishter, on the one hand, every mitzvah, the foundation of every mitzvah is that it's the Ratzon of Hashem. On the other hand, Hashem gave them reasoning. The chiddush over here is that because it's Torah's Moshe Avdi, which Moshe represents the idea of bittul, so even in the Torah, even the Eibishter gave the mitzvahs reasons, a yid is still able to be in tune with the mitzvah, the way it exists in its pure essence, the way it's a Ratzon Shalamayla metam v'das. And that's the connection between Moshe Rabbeinu and all of the mitzvahs. All of the mitzvahs are meant to be fulfilled as a chayk, like paraduma, a Ratzon Shalamayla metam v'das. What gives us the ability to fulfill the mitzvahs in a way of a Ratzon Shalamayla metam v'das? Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe represents the idea of bittul. And because the Torah is called Torah's Moshe Avdi, Moshe was an Eved, he was an Eved of the Eibishter, he was totally bought to the Eibishter, because the Torah was given to us through Moshe Rabbeinu. And it's the Torah's nikras al shmei shel Moshe. That's what gives the ability that even after Hashem gave reasoning, even after Hashem made some of the mitzvahs mishpatim, even after the Eibishter gave reasons to the mitzvahs, we are still able to be in tune with the fact that every mitzvah is the Ratzon of the Eibishter, just like paraduma, and therefore we are able to fulfill the mitzvahs because they are the Ratzon of the Eibishter, shalamayla metam v'das. These are the two explanations between Moshe Rabbeinu and paraduma. We start off Seif Aleph, we had a question. Why is paraduma nekras al shmei shel Moshe? What's the deep connection between Moshe Rabbeinu and paraduma? So the Rabbi is giving two explanations. The first explanation is, the foundation to all of the explanations is that paraduma does not refer, we're not referring to the specific mitzvah paraduma, rather paraduma refers to all the mitzvahs. When we say paraduma, we mean mitzvahs. So what's the connection between mitzvahs and Moshe Rabbeinu? Why are the mitzvahs paraduma mitzvahs. Nikras al shmei shel Moshe. Says the Rebbe, the first beer is because in order, what allows us to fulfill Torah mitzvahs is Mesiras Nefesh. And who gives us the koyach to fulfill the mitzvahs with Mesiras Nefesh? Who gives us the ability to be living tamid in a constant manner with the attitude of Mesiras Nefesh? That's Moshe Rabbeinu. That's the first connection between Moshe Rabbeinu and all the mitzvahs. Lo'elam yinikras al shemecha. The second explanation is that the truth is that every mitzvah is like paraduma, that we're meant to fulfill every mitzvah because it's the ratzon of Hashem Shalom Tamadas. Whether we understand it, whether the mitzvah makes sense to us or doesn't make sense to us, we're meant to fulfill the mitzvah because chukah gzer gazarti. And who gives us the ability to fulfill every mitzvah, even the mitzvah that we're nislabish b'tam, even the mitzvah that makes sense to us? Who gives us the ability to fulfill those mitzvahs just because of the ratzon of the Eibishter? Teras Moshe Avdi. Because the Torah is connected with Moshe Rabbeinu, which in Yoni is bittul, that's what allows us, that's what gives us the koyach to fulfill every mitzvah just because it's the ratzon of the Eibishter. And that's the second reason why why are all the mitzvahs called by the name of Moshe Rabbeinu? What's the deep connection between Moshe Rabbeinu and all the mitzvahs? Because Moshe is the one that gives us the ability to fulfill the mitzvahs because they are the ratzon of Hashem. Now in Seif Gimel, the Rebbe is going to go on to ask a question on this second beer between the connection of Moshe Rabbeinu and Paraduma. Let's see Seif Gimel inside. Says the Rebbe, "V'hine isa b'medrash al pasuk v'yikru lecha paraduma le'akadosh baruch hu l'Moshe l'chani megale tam parav lacher chuka v'tzarich lahavi in the cave when shel Moshe hisig atam d'chol ha-mitzvahs gam atam the mitzvahs paraduma eich nimshach al yoden since korech l'kiyam ha-mitzvahs ba'ofen the chuka chakakti gzer gazarti." The Rebbe is asking the following question. We just said before in Seif Beis that a Yid is meant to fulfill every mitzvah the same way he fulfills the mitzvah paraduma. Just like paraduma is a chayik, so Yidden are meant to be fulfilling the mitzvahs, every mitzvah, like the Rebbe ended off Seif Beis. Kikiyah mitzvahs paraduma. We're meant to fulfill every mitzvah like we would fulfill paraduma. And we said, who gives us the koyach to do this? Moshe Rabbeinu. Says the Rebbe, it says in the Medrash that the Eibishter told Moshe, L'cha ani megal tam paraduma. For you, Moshe Rabbeinu, paraduma is not a chayik. For you, I'm going to reveal to you the reasoning for the mitzvah paraduma. So for everybody else, even for Shleima Melech, paraduma was a chayk. But for Moshe Rabbeinu, Moshe is the only one that understood the reason for paraduma. So says the Rebbe, it's very shver. We're saying over here in the Maimer that who gives the Yidden the koyach to fulfill all the mitzvahs like the mitzvah paraduma, Moshe Rabbeinu. But hold on, for Moshe Rabbeinu, paraduma was not even a chayk. It was a logical mitzvah. Moshe Rabbeinu understood the reason for paraduma. So how is it that Moshe Rabbeinu, who understood the reason for paraduma, was able to give the Yidden the koyach to fulfill every mitzvah like paraduma? If by Moshe Rabbeinu, paraduma wasn't even a chayk. It doesn't make any sense. How could Moshe give us the koyach to fulfill the mitzvahs like paraduma, meaning l'maylam tam v'das, if for Moshe Rabbeinu, paraduma itself was not a mitzvah l'maylam tam v'das? That's the question I was asking here in Seif Gimel on this second beer we just gave in Seif Beis. Being that we're running a little late on time, we'll stop over here with the question, and in the next year, Be'ez Hashem, we will learn the answer to this question and finish the Dibar Maschil, which, as we mentioned before, the Dibar Maschil ends at the end of Seif Gimel.